I have to say, of all the pathways they've shown so far in Lord of Mysteries, I like the assassin one the most. Like, that whole later fight was super cool. Like, all the abilities they have, like concealment, backstabbing, the replacement technique, the curses and whatnot. It seems like, of all the classes, that'd be the one that I want to do. Of course, there's a hang up there of becoming assassin, as we've seen in episode 5, is that if you're a dude, you kind of have to give up something. You kind of have to give up something. I think I called that pretty quickly. I think when I seen the next segment was like, the next sequence was 7 and it was like witches or whatever, I'm like, yeah, it's got to be something like you change into a woman, especially when they kept saying that the higher ups were women. And I guess technically Klein at some point was like, that's going to make it difficult for the dude. I feel bad for Tris. It's going to make him difficult. I'm like, no, that person you just bumped into has got to be him. And the fact that he was equipped... and he seemingly changed very, very quickly into a woman, unless there was some sort of magic they were using in that pathway that makes you look like a female. Yeah, I assume that was going to be the case. Either you had to disguise yourself as a female, and then later on you're able to get into the higher sections, or it changes you completely. So yeah, it's a little bit of hang up for a lot of people. Some people wouldn't mind. Some people like that. Nope, that's not good. But yeah, really, really cool pathway. I really did like this, and hopefully, since it looks like they got away, Trissy got away, hopefully we'll see them again in the future. I just think that entire sect, I think, was a very interesting little segment there with the Demoness sect. I think their whole concept there being pretty much chaos. Like, yeah, we kind of had a lot of people that have different things they're seeking out. You had one sect that was just looking for things that are lost. This one's just pure chaos. They just want absolute chaos. And that kind of comes with the whole territory of Assassin, having curses and whatnot they can place on people. But anyways, yeah, episode 5, Lord of Mysteries, really cool episode. Let's just dive into it like we usually do. Opening up the episode, having this entire ceremony for the lost ones and the families and the survivors of the Alfalfa tragedy, which we get into finding out that there was apparently something happened on a ship. A lot of people died, and they kind of were in the playing it out as if it was sort of a siren's curse. That everybody on the ship started going crazy, taking each other out. And yeah, the person that we meet later on, Joyce, was one of the few survivors that got away. But yeah, they're all hailing the hero. Hero Tris that came into the picture and saved everybody. Which we find out later on that yes, when Klein uses his abilities to look into Joyce's memories, he ends up finding out that yes, it was all Tris. It was all Tris along. Now here's the weird thing, because this is where I kind of get in that realm where I'm starting to see sort of a bleed over with different abilities, because if I remember correctly, that was Dali's ability. As a spirit medium, they had the ability to look into people's memories or their dreams to see things. And that's why Klein had a little bit of a panic there in the fact that she was looking in his mind in the first episode and possibly could have seen his family. Now Klein is able to do that. So it's kind of weird. It seems like the seer abilities are starting to bleed into the spirit medium abilities, unless that's some sort of mysticism ability and not necessarily part of the pathway. I don't know. That seemed a little bit odd to have Klein doing something that she's done. Now, yes, as a seer, he has been having the ability to find things and whatnot. I just didn't know that he had the ability to look into people's memories now. Additionally, while inside of the memories of Joyce, he eventually does run into, I guess because it was Tris, or maybe while he was looking into it and spots Tris, he sees something. He gets transported into a palace and ends up hearing the same phrases again. Hornicus and Phlegria. So getting that whole statement in there again, and immediately Klein's thinking about the whole evil gods thing again. Possibly it's a lure. Is it some sort of clue towards transmigration? All that stuff coming up again. And yes, hoping that Azek will eventually contact him. Anyway, with this information, he brings it done. And that's when we get a little bit of a name drop of 2 new groups, which is the Mandated Punishers and the Machinery Hive Mind. I don't think we ever seen the Machinery Hive Mind throughout the episode. I know that we got to see the Mandated Punishers. It looked like they were the people that, I'm assuming they're a group that just goes around and exacts punishment for the church. Again, technically with our group, with the Nighthawks, it seems like they're more of investigating. And yes, in some cases, bringing down punishment. But I would assume that the Mandated Punishers are strictly for, if there's a criminal and there's no investigation needed, they just send them. I would assume that. Machinery Hive Mind, I would assume that they are maybe possibly just sort of an informant group. Like there are people that will just look into things, sort of spies or so. That's my assumption they are. But again, I don't remember seeing them in the episode. And then we get the breakdown of what the Demoness sect is. Again, this is a very interesting group, very much so about chaos specifically. The card says, worships the primordial Demoness and believes this concealed identity is the true successor of the creator. So again, the whole system of the creation and it breaking up in different parts, their assumption is this primordial Demoness is literally the successor. Like, it's supposed to replace that. Primordial Demoness is believed to be nurtured from chaos as the oldest one, born from within the creator. So seemingly the first one to come from the creator's body. And also the final one that brings into all things. Again, so I would assume that part of it, being the fact that it's the final one, that they are the ones that want to bring about that ruin. The upper ranks are all female. Key thing there. Again, that stuck in my brain the entire episode. Organization was called the Demoness family in the Epoch of Gods. Members were few at the time, and the family was propagated by the bloodline. Their mission is to spread disaster. They possess the assassin pathway. Again, the moment I see an assassin, I was like, okay, here we go. I typically don't really like assassin classes in a lot of things. I mean, like, for instance, the Fate series. Never really been a fan of the assassin class. Even though it includes Shootin' Doji that continues to elude me on Fate Grand Order. That's when we cut over Tris enjoying his victory lap, I guess. Enjoying some nice women in bed. And he's approached by, I'm assuming, is a demoness from the Demoness sect. And we get an identification for him, and he's Sequence 8 Assassin Pathway Instigator. Yeah, the moment I see an instigator, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much like manipulating everybody, making them fight each other, which they kind of get into that whole aspect later on from Klein's perspective, that their whole thing is to cause chaos, to cause conflict between individuals. But yeah, he points out the fact that it feels great to manipulate a bunch of people to kill each other and then wake up in bed with women. I guess he could still do that. I guess still as Trissy, he could still do that. I'm assuming. But yeah, she says that he has one more mission to complete before he leaves. Apparently one of the collaborators has already been caught by the Nighthawks. He has to finish it himself, and that she's going to reward him beforehand. He has the recipe for Sequence 7, which is Witch. Again, when I seen Witch, I kind of assumed, because Witch is typically, yes, gendering for female, that, yeah, he would probably have to either change gender or, I don't know, I guess there could be male witches in a lot of lore. Which is funny because, yes, later on when we do see him in the underground market, he was looking for lizards, and then he ended up fleeing from there, and immediately the next time we see him, he's changed to Trissy. So I'm assuming the lizard was probably one of the last ingredients that he needed, and then once he got that, he was able to create the potion, and again, it changed him. But yeah, the underground market, very cool location. This is like one of those little lore world-building type of things that I really, really like, which is some sort of underground market of Tengen. Neil was helping Klein find some materials for amulets to give to his sister and brother, Melissa and Benson, which would be carryover from the previous episode that, yes, the two of them are in danger because of his job, so he wants something to protect them. Neil mentioned the fact that the location is really great for finding Beyonder materials, so I guess note that for later on. I'm guessing for like mysticism spells and whatnot, amulets, maybe even ingredients for, as we see with Tris coming there, possibly ingredients that they'll need for going to different sequences. Klein questions if the church allows this stuff going on down there, and Nail says that the mandated punishers of the Church of Storms have always pretended not to see such things. So I'm guessing they're kind of playing into the realm of sort of seeing a benefit to having the underground, or the idea that some of them do end up getting information or buy goods from them, so they kind of just turn a blind eye to the whole situation, which is kind of interesting. Klein ends up bumping into some guy that has a massive spiritual perception, and the guy immediately runs up to him, says he has a stench of death before, like, bleeding out of his eyes. Neil says that he was born with high spiritual perception, and he's always blabbing nonsense. But yeah, Klein immediately picks up on it, like, no, I think this dude actually did sense the fact that Klein, anyways, has technically died before. It's always the crazy person that can see through everything. That's when they get to the amulet shop, which I don't know if this will be for something later on, but when they first arrive there, the guy says to Neil immediately that they have water from the spring of elves. I don't know if that's going to be one of those things where it's like some like name they give to some certain water from a location, or if that means that they actually have elves in this world. I'd be curious of that. I haven't seen sort of any indication of different races or whatnot in this world so far. Like, everybody so far has seemed to be human, but I wouldn't doubt if they might actually have other races there. I would probably think it's probably just going to turn into one of those things where it's just a name they give it. But yeah, Klein looks at all the stuff, ends up finding something the guy claims to be writing from Roselle, which I'm guessing that was probably a lie. The text on the object itself didn't look like simplified Chinese, so I'm guessing that Klein looked at it and said, yeah, that's not what that is. Moving on. But yeah, the stuff was really expensive. Neil says, yeah, grab one of those one that's like half built. You could build off of it. That'll be perfect. He's like, yeah, I'll have to figure out a way to get reimbursed for it. And Neil's immediate response is, that's how you do it, boy. Klein's literally like, I'm buying these to have protection to give to my siblings, and I'm going to write it off, basically. I'm going to get a reimbursement for it. And Neil's just like, yep, that's how we do it around here. Everything that you need, just get reimbursed. Just make sure to keep the receipt and have your boss pay for it. I love Neil. I do like Neil. I think all the scenes with Neil, he's a pretty cool dude. I mean, it was like, I guess it was all from that previous scene that we had with him going out and showing them the whole, like, finding the stuff to pay off his debt. That stuff's really great. But yeah, that's when Tris shows up, again, looking for the lizard and starts to flee. They chase after him. Apparently, Dunn has the information that they need, that they have the okay to go after him. Evidence has been found that it's Tris. And when they get to the location where he hides away in, for some reason, they just let him walk right out. Yeah, I think when the very unique woman comes walking out of there and just stumbles into Klein, I'm like, that's totally him. But my assumption at the time was that he just used some sort of assassin ability to change his appearance. I didn't connect the idea that he literally put the potion together right then, drank it, and then turned into a woman and walked out the door. That was the stretch that I wasn't really placing together at the time. I think the tip-off for me was the fact that he was injured. And it's so dumb that Klein even uses seer abilities to look at her, and he doesn't see anything. Like, the colors look fine. And so I'd assume that he'd be like, yeah, that person said that he was sick, and they're not really sick. Question mark? Whatever. Klein, you're too unguarded. But yeah, during this segment, that's when they do mention the fact that later sequences of the potions appear to be suited for female users, which that's the point where he's like, I feel bad for this Tris guy because it's going to be hard for him to rise up in the ranks. Which, yes, technically him bringing that up at that point should have tipped him off. Like, there's a little bit of a nod there that he should have picked up on that. But anyways, after that, we have a little bit of passage of time. Klein starts working on his training. He's going to the Tarot Club. Mentioned the fact that the 3-part honorifics test is succeeded and it's responding. Apparently, Hangman is looking at him slightly different, changed his attitude to him, which, yeah, I assume that whole aspect is that he knew that whole ritual was something to put Klein, or at least, the Fool, into the same realm as the gods, and so he's probably seeing him or respecting him as probably a god. But again, it does specify here that Klein notes that he has not been able to use the Gray Fog's power yet. And that was kind of the assumption that I had, is that once he does figure that out, and again, probably ties it to his seer abilities, he will possibly be able to manifest the powers of the fog in this world. But apparently, he hasn't been able to do that yet. Even though, again, it seemed like how, at least it was translated in the previous episode when he was fighting the mirror, or rather fighting Vincent, that he was able to manifest it, but it seems like not. He became a full employee. He finally got approval to become a full employee, so he's got a pay raise, woot woot. He finished his crafting of the amulets, gave that to Melissa and Benson. Apparently, Melissa doesn't like the idea of him giving expensive presents to her. Still taking essential mysticism classes and, yeah, training physically. But all the piece comes to a close as they notice that there's a bunch of people going sick and dying. Death rates have been increasing by 5-fold. They're looking into it. Apparently, it's mostly people, as Leonard puts it later on, people that were close to dying anyways are all being killed off in some way. They look into this one lady's place, and she apparently was very sickly already, having some sort of heart problem before she just passed away. Out of nowhere, Klein pulls the memories of Klein's self into the picture. And the idea that Klein's mother apparently was in a similar situation, that at some point she was already weak and she just passed away. But also pointing out the fact that Benson, apparently at that point, worked really hard in order to keep their family afloat, which I think they implied that before. I think they implied before that Benson was doing a lot of things in order to keep them all, secured in some way. I know the series opens up with Klein and Melissa pretty much being in some rundown apartment, but I'm assuming that Benson was doing his own work in order to keep the name something, or at least keep them to where they're not starving and not in some sort of slum area. Their apartment was run down, but they were at least eating and they were healthy. Let's just put it that way. So it was a really cool, little random look into the Moriete family, at least. Anyhow, Klein looks into the memories of the lady, ends up finding out that some hand touched her in the back, and that lines up with a lot of other things that people are seeing. Leonard ends up kind of connecting with Klein the idea that it seems like some sort of life usurpation where they're gathering different lives, and in order to pretty much create this big massive summoning ritual. He says specifically the life usurpation is to use it to summon evil gods or devils, or to perform a terrifyingly large-scale curse. I'm assuming based on how the episode sort of ends out, they were going for curse, because it seems like they were targeting specifically the people from that ship. But yeah, I've always been kind of sus of Leonard. But again, we're kind of getting this whole thing again. I think it was really around the point in which Leonard was able to break out of the artifact, was able to break out of the puppet's control, and there was like some sort of odd conversation with him later on, talking to Klein, where I'm like, I don't know that I want to go in the realm that he is some sort of person that is an isekai as well. He could be. I wouldn't put it that far up beyond it, but I think that he does sort of have something special about him. I don't know if it'll be tied in with the realm of the fog or not, or something else, but he does seem to have something special about him. But yeah, right here specifically, he's like, that worked really well. We're like the two protagonists. And Klein's like, why would you say that? Have you had any strange encounters? And he says, we both have secrets. As long as you don't threaten the Nighthawks, we're colleagues. Hope you see me the same way. Interesting. Again, Klein's sort of half joking here, saying, why are you acting like a protagonist? Did you have some sort of weird encounter that would make you believe that you are a protagonist? Again, the idea of him being taken to this other realm and given godlike powers, that's sort of a protagonist mindset. He doesn't deny it. He just says, we both have secrets. But at least it does sort of hint at the idea that he's not an enemy either, because right here he's saying, as long as you don't threaten the Nighthawks, we're cool. We both have our secrets. We both have our techniques and abilities we can't talk about that makes us special. But I'm not the enemy of the Nighthawks. I think that's what's really saying. I'm not the enemy of the Nighthawks. I think he could still later turn on at least Klein, but at least implies to me that he does support the Nighthawks, or at least finds them to be a home, ? Now, the only way that would go against Klein maybe in the future is if he does find at some point that the Nighthawks does have something about it that might be crooked. And if he were to try to go against that, Leonard might go against him at that point, but we'll see. Anyways, that's the point in which they go to attack Trissy. they hunt down Trissy. They end up going to this one location. Immediately, Trissy ends up using concealment, does some backstab, but it's just a nightmare. Really cool little fight sequence here. We're deflecting a bullet with the blade. Again, later on, at some point, Leonard gets a shot in on him, and it seems like it kind of hits a replacement self. So it looked like it was Trissy running across the side of the actual building, but it was some sort of substitution. But not just that, it also did some sort of counterattack. Like when you hit the substitution, it hits you back kind of thing, which is really cool. Some great Dunn moments. As per usual, Dunn is just like a total badass. Like he just goes inside that building, gets wrapped by some weird kind of curtain. He ends up busting out of it, uses his sleepless ability, just goes nuts in there. I'm going to hate when Dunn dies, because I think that Dunn for sure is going to die eventually. He coughs blood too much. Dude's always coughing blood. He's gotten like really messed up before, nearly avoided being like completely infected. He's too cool of a leader that I just feel like he's going to die at some point. But yeah, Trissy ends up summoning some shadows. We get a little information on the 4 ranks of dead soul type monsters, which is remnants of resentment, shadows, wraiths, and evil spirits. One of the shadows does end up getting the other guy that came with them, and it looked like it nearly kind of froze him, but some sort of ability unlocked and was able to kind of break him out of it. So I'm not sure if that's something to do with the guy's ability. I don't remember if they mentioned what that guy's class was, but eventually Trissy goes to make her escape, runs into Leonard, ends up stabbing him with a flower before running off and giving him the first taste of the witch's curse. Which, in response, Leonard flicks off his fingernail, grabs it, takes a strand of hair, wraps the fingernail before jabbing it into the hole and flicking it off, and the curse explodes. I'm assuming he used the fingernail, he ripped out the fingernail probably so that he had something to scoop out whatever poison was inside of his skin. And I'm thinking the hair itself was a way of sort of activating a spell to move the curse. I don't know. It was just weird that he used both the fingernail and the hair specifically. But again, this dude knows a lot. Leonard knows way too much. Very resourceful, that's for sure. Anyways, it all wraps it up with them going up to the mirror. Klein restores it so that he can see memories in it before he spots a female, which is the assassin. And again, Leonard walks in and says, "That looks a lot like Tris." He knows too much. Leonard knows way too much. That looks a lot like Tris. Like he's ever seen Tris before. He wasn't at the whole event. He was declared a hero, so a lot of people knew what he looked like. They technically have drawing portraits of him, but yeah, to be able to look at a reflection in the mirror and go, "That's definitely Tris." Yeah, Leonard knows way too much. But yeah, that's when they discover that, does that mean that Tris was a woman? No, that means that Tris became a woman. Oh, so that's why the higher-ups are always female. Their secret of the sect is that they have to castrate themselves. Again, I kind of seen that coming from, like, again, probably the point in which Klein bumped into her when he was walking out of the building. It just seemed like that would probably be the point in which he switched over. And then, yeah, we get a little shot of Trissy in a train. Sequence 7 witch Trissy. Again, I hope that we see Trissy again, or at least the assassin pathway, because I think that a lot of the abilities in that one was really cool. And I think the main key thing is that a lot of the assassin pathway abilities that Trissy was using was very distinct to an assassin. Again, it's, concealment, it's backstabbing, it's cursing, stuff like that. I think the idea of an assassin with witch abilities is really, really cool. So I think that entire pathway is pretty awesome. But compared to like a lot of the other pathways, they feel like they all sort of blend together in ways. Like, yeah, like the Midnight Poet, it makes sense that it has like some sort of area effect that sort of kind of messes with people. But then you get like Nightmare, seems like it's creating a location as well. And like I said before, you have Klein using seer abilities to look into people's memories, just like over here, Dali was doing as well. Like it seems like a lot of this stuff kind of blends. Anyways, really cool episode. Looking forward to more as always. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button before you leave. If you like this content and you want to support the channel, become a member of the channel. And I appreciate you guys' support. And until next week, until next time, y'all take care.